a bunch of the flight school airplanes they had there. And so I actually got to be at the controls of one of those airplanes. And then after that point, it was kind of like, oh, I'm going to do this. And being in Wisconsin, northeastern Wisconsin, we have Oshkosh, the annual fly-in there, and that the Experimental Aircraft Association puts on. And so this just pulls aviation from all over the world. So that was kind of what kind of molded me into it. RC has kind of been something that I've been getting into more now that I'm going into UAS. It's always kind of been like a little bit of a tinkering interest, but I've been more focused on the man side of things. So I originally kind of picked out school as the University of North Dakota as one that would be it's one of the top aviation schools. So I was planning to go there, either become an airline pilot or become a commercial pilot for a private jet sort of thing, do that kind of stuff. And then as I was going there, they're showing us around, touring the different majors and stuff. And they're like, oh yeah, we have this new major that started up back in 2009. It's still relatively new. It's called our Unmanned Aircraft Systems major. And basically at that time, it was still a little bit in its infancy. It's come about a lot more now, and they're still adding more and more stuff into it. But essentially what the program comes down to is you get almost all of your manned licensings per the FAA and the US here. So I have my private pilot license. I came into college with that. I'm currently working on my instrument course to get my instrument license. After that, I will get my commercial rating and then my multi-engine rating. And then after that, I can either stop or I can also get my CFI, my flight instructor certificates and everything that go along with that afterwards. But then that's kind of the man side, and it gives us a lot more background into how airplanes work and all the aircraft systems classes that we have to take. And then you also have the unmanned side of it. So we're taking courses in basically the two highlight courses are 331 and 332. These courses you take together. So AVIT 331 is a bunch of the RC systems. So this is the core classes for the small UAS track. They've recently split it into a small UAS and a high UAS. So the small scale would be stuff similar to what we're flying, the AR wings, the little darts and stuff, and then quadcopters. And then they also have a new high-end track. We have an Air Force base in Grand Forks that flies the RQ-4 Global Hawks. And so we have a very close partnership with the Air Force there and General Atomics and Northrop Grumman, who are also based out at the Air Force Base at one of the US's only commercial drone parks. And so that high altitude track is more towards the military or these large scale operations of UAS that are 100 feet across and these really long tail ones. So these, yeah, go.
I was going to ask you, it's interesting. So the small one, that one in particular, wanted to ask you briefly, is there a career you can go into after that?
Yeah. So a lot of what we're focused on right now is research. That's a big part of our UAS market for the college. A lot of what they're focusing on is research, along with the Grand Sky Drone Park out at the Air Force Base. They're more so focused on the remote ID. They've been working on that for several years between Fargo and Grand Forks, how to track small UAS, how to track stuff like that. And then we have a couple of companies based in Grand Forks, like Eyesight RPV and Skyscopes. They are operating these small UAS, employing almost wholly University of North Dakota graduates from the unmanned aircraft program. And what they do is they'll take these similar, I think they fly Alta 8s, DJI M600s, similar platforms like that, and they'll take them and they'll inspect rail lines for BNSF in the Dakotas and up and down the plains. Wind turbine inspection is really a bread and butter for them. So instead of sending some guy who's going to rappel up and down and check all the blades on these huge wind turbines out in the Midwest, they'll take a drone with a camera on it or an IR sensor on it, and they'll fly it up and down each of the blades, and you can inspect an entire windmill in 15 minutes, where it would normally take a guy an entire day to set up all the safety riggings. It just keeps them nice and safe. Oil pipelines is another big one. The RISE, Research Institute for Autonomous Systems, which is based inside of University of North Dakota, they've been working a lot lately with the oil producers in the western part of North Dakota and a lot of our oil pipelines to be able to take either fixed-wing aircraft or multi-rotor aircraft with INAV type setups and be able to fly them along these oil pipelines and then use different sensor packages to check for leaks or any damage or anything in these pipelines and be able to inspect them weekly instead of monthly.
Wow. Okay. Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, a lot of people get into this as a hobby, and especially guys older, people like myself who are well out of college. I'm really pissed off that you have these wonderful majors. I mean, I would have been there in a heartbeat if I was your age. But you've got, we've got a lot of people who have kids coming up, and this is just a fantastic explanation. I never thought for a minute, like, I thought this was just a hobby. I never thought you can actually take this and make a career out of it. So this is really exciting. And your group, you have a bunch of guys there in your college that found out about the INAV fixed wing group?
Yeah, so we have the UND UAS RC Club. So what we do is we're kind of split into two kind of focuses. We have multi-rotor. That actually splits off into a separate club called the Rotohawks, who recently, I think they placed second or third in the nation on a virtual drone championship since our in-person one got canceled due to the pandemic. So we do racing of quadcopters, so the little 5-inch ones with the FPV setups. And so for another one of the club members, we have a couple electrical engineering students, a couple mechanical engineering students, one middle school elementary education major, and then a couple of commercial aviation and mostly UAS majors. So we're kind of a nice mix of everything. One of our UAS majors is taking his 332 class this semester. And what that focuses on is similar to building an FPV wing. Basically, it has to be fully autonomously capable of GPS, and it has to be built to do a special mission, and you have to build it all from the ground up, basically. So what he was doing for the class is researching, and he found the AR wing, and he was looking at that. He mentioned it to our president, who's an electrical engineering major, who's big into fixed wing. Our club liaison is he's the project manager for RISE. And so what he does is he does a lot of their projects and manages a lot of their research. So we supply kind of pilots for them to be able to do their research opportunities. And then so what he came up to is he found these INAV wings. And so we kind of looked at it and we're like, oh, if we do this all together, we can bring the cost way down for all of us and we can all experiment with this. And a lot of us younger guys who are going to have to take it in our sophomore and junior and senior years, we'll already have a little bit of experience on it, and we can just take it and go one step further with it. So we got about 5 or 6 guys all together, and we're all kind of building different styles of the AR wings for different missions. Some are going up with 4-cell motors, 4-cell batteries, so that they can do half-hour races with them.
Wow.
I think our president, JJ, said he clocked his at about 120 ground speed a couple weeks ago with the tailwind out in North Dakota.
So what you have to do is you have to go back, because I know you just finished up college and you're moving out right now for the semester.
Nope, I'm a freshman.
Freshman. Okay,
I just finished up my first year due to the pandemic and everything. I moved out of the dorms and am back home in Wisconsin. And this next week, I'll be heading back out to North Dakota to finish out my out summer classes and stuff, and then flight training from the spring.
So what you got to do when you get back there, you got to talk to them about the fellows, Dr. Marc Hoffman from Germany and Dr. Darren Lyons from the UK. It's just, if you can get them out there as special educators. Marc, this actually sounds like a program for you.
Yeah, it sounds really interesting. So especially with the AR wing, I have a lot of experience already, especially for optimizing it for maximum flight time and range and all that stuff. I have a pretty efficient setup that flies about 60 to 90 minutes with a small lithium ion pack. There's also someone in the chat, Robert Ortleb, and he said he uses rings and multicopters, it seems also based on the INAV, for using crop inspection. So it's also a very common usage for that stuff.
Fantastic. That's oh my God, that's great. I mean, so this is neat, because it's one thing that what I like about this hobby is it's something you can pick up on your you can play it like a game. So you can play it with a simulator. You can learn how to fly in line of sight. You can actually take it to the next level and start playing with it and actually building the planes themselves and doing something. But it's nice to hear that there's actually, after you can go to college for this now, and afterwards you can actually start a career with this, other than doing wedding videography.
Yeah, exactly. A lot of our guys are interested in more the autonomous side of it, because as you know, anybody can go buy a DJI Air or a DJI Mavic now, and you can go and you can film weddings or you can do real estate photography. It doesn't really take a whole lot to do that, depending on the regulations of your country. Here in the US, it's as simple as taking a test to pass it for regulation purposes. But not everybody knows how to build a full-on autonomous wing. Not everybody knows how to do a lot of this stuff. So a lot of it, if you can put a college degree to it, we're also starting to add more classes in counter UAS. So how do you block out parts of the sky to protect certain resources that you might have on the ground? With the Air Force Base and Grand Forks, and also especially out west in Minot, where we have spots that are sensitive to national security, where they don't necessarily want small UAS flying around. How do you defend against somebody walking to take pictures or potentially do damage to personnel on the ground?
And especially you need to be very careful, so it doesn't happen like just recently. I think it was in the Netherlands, where a commercial UAV got lost. They lost the connection, and then with a flight time of nearly 4 days, so they had
fully loaded it, lost track of it right away.
And they had
guys shared that to the group, and they're like, "Holy cow, this is something that we hope never happens to us."
And they had to completely shut down the airspace in a big area for more than 3 days to be sure that no incident happens.
Yeah, and that's another thing that makes UND and the University of North Dakota out and North Dakota so great for this sort of stuff, is that there's nothing out there. Like, I'd be lying if it said it's a metropolis. I mean, you can go outside of town drive for 20 minutes, and you can look over the horizon and not see a single building or a single structure in any direction, which makes it ideal for UAS testing, because the only thing that you're going to run into if you do beyond visual line of sight or anything in the US here, if you do anything like that in North Dakota, the only thing you're going to hit is maybe a grain silo or something somewhere. I mean, there's just no population density to the area, so there's a lot that they can do as far as getting permission to test out certain new systems.
Long-range paradise. The only thing that can hit you is a hawk.
Yeah, exactly. There's nothing out there to hit. And we also are home to the 4th and 5th tallest structures in the world, about 20 miles south of Grand Forks. By Hillsboro, North Dakota, there's these 2 TV towers that go up to, I think it's 2,400 and 2,500 feet AGL respectively.
Yeah.
So
someone has to go up there and change the
make sure you don't hit those.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. There's a video of a guy changing that light bulb. He crawls to the very top. He does it once every 6 months. Fantastic. Well, hey, James, thank you so much for sharing the information about the program. It's okay if you hang out with us. We're going to be talking lots of tech stuff today. We're going to switch gears now. We have another college student coming to us from the UK. Yep. Luke, how you doing, man?
Yeah, I'm doing good. Yeah.
All right. You are an electrical engineering major, right?
Yeah, I'm doing electronic engineering at the University of Portsmouth.
Okay. We just really quick, I needed to, we just touched on this before this call started. There's a difference between colleges and universities. In the United States, we have something called majors. So we have university is comprised of many different colleges. So when you go to university, like University of North Dakota, that means it's comprised of colleges. So there's probably a college of business, a college of engineering, a college of That's how we do it. And then you have a major inside of there and a minor. So my major when I went to college was business administration, minor in social psychology. So that's how we're talking about that earlier. It's kind of I guess you're in the College of Electrical Engineering, or College of Engineering, specializing in electrical engineering.
I guess you'd say that I'm in the College of, I think it's technology. I think I'm in the technology. We call it a school, so School of Technology.
Yes.
That's kind of like quite a loose thing. That's not like an official term. It's just what people call it in the university, more for like internal things. And then I'm doing an electronic engineering major, so I guess is what you'd call it.
Fantastic. All right, and you are like a senior right now?
Because of the whole virus thing, I've just finished my 2nd year. So.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you guys are young.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh! We have a freshman in this. 2nd year. Do you call them sophomore or you?
No, we don't. I am aware of the sophomore freshman thing that you guys have, but no, we just call it 1st year, 2nd year.
All right. So James is 1st year, you're 2nd year in college, and you have a 4-year program.
Well, I'm doing a 4-year program with the possibility of extending to a master's, which would be a 5th-year program, or a 5-year program. But one of those years is a year placement, so that's what I'm doing for the next year. So I'm working at a company, and then I'll go back to university afterwards.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting thing. They don't have that very much in the United States. My daughter looked at a college called Northeastern University, and they had that as part of the college. You have to go out and do an internship, is what we call them here. So, you actually have to leave college, move out, and then you would have to go work for 6 months to a year, and you have to come back and find new roommates all over again and get your stuff out of storage.
I mean, for my course, it's completely optional. It's definitely quite strongly recommended in terms of it's quite good for your career and that kind of thing. It makes getting a job after university a lot easier because you've already got a year's experience and that kind of thing. And I just really wanted to take a break. I mean, I've been doing education for, I guess, like 15 years now, non-stop, or with only a 6-week break. So I thought it'd be quite nice to do a year of working.
So you're working right now. We're not really going to talk too much about it because it's top secret, and you'd have to kill us. The closest guy is Darren. You would have to kill.
I wouldn't call it top secret. I mean, I can certainly tell you like off their website what I do. So I'm working for LiveLink Aerospace, and they're doing counter drone technologies. So they cover from the full. I'm just trying to find the bit where they say it, but it's end to end, so it's from detection all the way up to capture of rogue drones, if you like. So yeah.
Okay.
Steve.
So sorry, Steve disappeared.
Yeah, sorry. I have a little dog that just likes to come in and she'll come in and start knocking on the door. So sorry about that. I'm just kind of disappear for a second there. But yeah, I heard everything you said. All right, so detection of drones. So it's similar to what James was talking about.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, we have one course in it where he's getting his whole degree in it, or whole education in it. Yeah.
Well, my education is just electronic engineering, and then I'm just doing this job through having done electronic engineering and them seeing my aeroplane stuff and that kind of thing.
So basically, you're working on these kinds of project where Germany wants to spend about 50 million euros during the next years to make airports safer, drone safe.
That kind of thing. Yeah, I mean, it's not necessarily specifically for airports, but it's for anywhere where you want to monitor, drone activity and then be able to control it to some extent. Yeah.
Okay.
So how did you get started in the aviation side of doing the RC stuff?
I mean, I've been doing RC planes since before I could ride a bike. Really, since I don't know what age, and I've been doing it ever since. I've only been doing FPV since maybe 2014, something like that.
Wow.
And INAV only 2 or 3 years, but I've been doing RC planes since forever. So
I hope it makes you feel good to know that we had Paul on a couple weeks ago, the main developer of INAV.
Yeah.
And between all of us in the group, it was myself, it was Marc, and it was Darren talking to him. All of us haven't been flying more than 5 years.
So I've actually been flying FPV the longest out of everyone then, just by chance.
You're like the grandfather of us, yeah. No, I mean, it's kind of like my first successful plane flight was with flying an actual RC plane by myself autonomously. It was back in 2016.
Yeah.
So, and then, and I think Marc's around the same time too, and Darren's around the same time, right?
Yeah, for me, it started around 2017. It was about 2 weeks of sickness at home and a lot of time on YouTube. And then I found cheap 3D printers. I had one and then didn't know what to do with it. So I started printing airplanes and drones. That's how I started with the hobby.
Yeah, my first FPV experience was with a cheap. Well, actually, still the only pair of goggles I've got, a pair of Hobby King box goggles. I just stuck like really cheap camera and video transmitter onto a Watt 4, which is a quite common plane over here.
Yeah, check it
Yeah,
out.
just went for a flight with it, and that was about it. It was horrible, and it had like the camera looking through the prop and stuff. But yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So you were a big help in the group as far as, I mean, answering a lot of the technical questions. It's like yourself and Darren is kind of like definitely, obviously you have a lot more experience on the side working with the electrical engineering. So anything that has electronics base is pretty much, you know what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, there isn't really much overlap between the INAV fixed wing group stuff and electronics in terms of my degree. All of my degree stuff is really focusing on circuit design, understanding electronics concepts and that kind of thing. But yeah, certainly that's kind of like my interest, the more technical stuff, I guess. Yeah, aerospace stuff.
Cool.
Speaking of circuit design stuff, you could also get in touch with Albert Krakow. He's also in the group, and he also does some circuit designs for own stuff. Like he developed his own 2.4 gigahertz video receiver for Fat Shark goggles. Yeah, and just the receiver board, of course, with a ready ready to use
cam modules or whatever.
Yeah, it's a standard module he can
yeah.
use in his Fat Shark goggle or in his ground station. And he also did some nice LED stuff like beacon LEDs, ultra bright and configurable LED stripes. And the last big project he made, we started that together. You know this U360 GTS antenna tracker? This open source project, and he made a very, very compact tracker design out of it with custom designed PCBs to make the cabling easier. And it's about 4 or 5 PCBs in there, including a front panel display, homing sensor with IR detection to automatically home the tracker in a straight position to have it as compact as possible. It's really nice. So maybe you can also get in touch with him for some stuff.
Yeah, definitely.
So one of the things I wanted to talk about today, we've got like the brain trust here with all the stuff. So we've got a lot of interesting things going on inside the group over the last week. And I don't know if you guys have been paying attention. I know you guys have been finishing up college. But so there's the minor thing we should talk about, otherwise I forget all about it, which was there was one of the members kept posting videos of his plane crashing when he's flying a Spectrum radio. Did you see that series of videos and photos?
I think I remember seeing a little bit on somebody having problems with Spectrum. Right.
So that's a guy who's actually somebody who works at Harvard. Or was it MIT? I think it was Harvard. Yeah, and so really bright guy. And he comes to the group, and this is like one of his first posts. And so it brought up the question. I was holding off to ask this to the group, which is, when it comes to actual transmitter and receivers for INAV, we get people in here and they always start off with something else, and then they always kind of drift over to one of the OpenTX platforms, such as FrSky or Jumper. We hadn't seen anyone with success with these Spectrum radios. Have you guys actually ever worked with them before?
Yeah, I started off with Spectrum. I've been using Spectrum really since I started flying, or at least since I went over to 2.4. And then I got my Tyrannus X9D in early 2019, I guess, late 2018. But I have a Spectrum module, so I took the module out of my DX7S transmitter and put it into my Tyrannus X9D. So I keep flying with the Spectrum protocol quite a bit.
Okay. Have you noticed, because I did have one Spectrum radio, and I kind of noticed that it would work fine, and all of a sudden you get a dropout and the plane's going down. I mean, is that something that you've seen before?
I mean, no more than with any other protocol. If you go out of range, or if you go too far away, then you'll have that kind of issue. But I don't think Spectrum has significantly less range than the FreeSky 2.4 protocol or the other ones. Yeah. I don't
Okay,
know.
so you can vouch for it, and you've worked with the satellites.
As it happens, I did actually switch from Spectrum to FreeSky because I was having range issues, but that was mainly due to using the orange receivers and that kind of thing, the cheap knockoff ones and that sort of thing. So
okay, yeah.
I don't think it's so much of a range issue, but I think, I mean, no radio system's going to be perfect. I mean, even like the Yetis
exactly.
and all that have issues. But I think in different environments, possibly other radios will handle it better, because where I tend to fly a lot, when I first looked at starting there about 2015, I guess, they were all recommending Spectrum, and yeah, it's a really good system. They use it so you can buddy from it easy. So I ended up getting a DX6i, but I didn't end up going back till I think 2017. And at that point, everyone was saying, don't use Spectrum. We've had so many people, so many blackouts with it and issues with the receivers. Use FreeSky instead. So I have still got the Spectrum, the DX6i, but I only really used it when I was buddying. And since then I've switched to FreeSky. But I don't know, I think maybe it's more environment more than anything else. But the issue with the guy in the video is there wasn't really enough information to go on, because the OSD display was in 16.9, so it chopped off like the disarm reason. I mean, that could have even been switched. Well, you can't really tell. There wasn't really enough to go on. He was only 200 meters away, so I can't see it being range. So it's either an issue, an accidental disarm, or it's the environment, but it needs to be a really bad environment, I would imagine.
Yeah, I mean, oh, sorry, yeah, carry
on.
No,
carry on. Yeah.
Oh, the only Spectrum has frequency hopping very similar to FreeSky and all the others. The only problem is if you use DSM2, then that doesn't have frequency hopping. And actually, I've only ever had fail-safes with Spectrum on DSM2, and that's all environmental stuff.
Yeah, if I can jump in here too. One of my kind of part-time jobs through college has been flying an RC blimp for our hockey arena. A couple of our club members fly for them as well. And so a lot of our club, we use the FrSky transmitters. A couple of them have just got jumpers. One of them uses Spectrum. He's never had any real big problems with it. But the only time I've actually used the Spectrum controllers is with the blimp. And so during training and stuff, when we're going through it, we use the same system, same everything, same settings. It'll fly around the entire whole of the arena, absolutely no problem. When we fill the arena up with people, and you get a lot more interference in there, be it from their cell phone signals or just them absorbing frequency or just so many bodies in the space, you can only go, you can only go out to about to where our Jumbotron is. So you're really only limited to like a third of the stadium, because if you go any farther than that, we start getting these weird brownouts where we completely lose control of the blimp, and it's got these motors underneath on the gondola, and you can see it just disconnect itself, and it just rotates them back up to their stored position when it's off. And then it'll drift down a little bit, and then it'll come back on, and you have to try and get it back before it browns out again.
That's exactly what I had when I flew the Spectrum. It's going fine, and all of a sudden it just glitches, and then when it glitches, it's going down. And these are those modules you're talking about. This is one of the satellite modules, and these were kind of popular a few years ago because you could plug these into an Omnibus F4 V3. They plug right in, and you can get the whole protocol to work. But I don't know. It seems like since the Omnibus F4 V3, we've kind of moved over to just S-Bus now, and I don't even see these Spectrum modules as being added onto flight controllers. Darren, you're going to say something?
No, I was just going to mention, I think James makes a really good point about the mobile phones, because because I've read quite a lot about if you're flying, and especially with Spectrum, is don't keep your mobile phone in your pocket. I've had no problem with FreeSky, but as you say, Spectrum might be a bit more susceptible to mobile phone frequencies, that sort of thing. So
yeah,
that could be something to try out.
Yeah, and we fly in pretty small groups with the club. We'll maybe get like 10 guys together, and we never do anything different with our cell phones. We're inside for most of the time. We're at school because it's frigidly cold outside, so we have this big gym that we'll fly in. And Spectrum, the guy who flies Spectrum, he's never had any problems with it. We'll get on the most nights, we'll have about 40, 50 guys in there. Spectrum would be just fine, no problems. But then we get large groups of people inside the arena. I think sold out nights for the arena is like 12,000 people. And you got them all connecting to the Wi-Fi and connecting to their cell phone signals and stuff. And it just completely destroys any sort of transmission you have. Same thing with our video transmitter too. We've noticed it only works in certain spots for the video that we stream down from it.
What range is that? Is that 5.8?
Yeah, I believe so. I think it's we run the video on the 5.8, and then we run the transmitter on the 2.4 gigahertz, and we'll maybe get about, I'd say, 150 feet, if that.
Wow. Okay.
And then it'll start to brown out.
I think
go ahead.
I think it also very depends on how the receiver handles external influences. I know from FreeSky receivers, for example, the ACCST protocol, it does a very aggressive spread spectrum handling, so it moves all through the whole 2.4 gigahertz band it can use, and it also jumps over frequencies where it sees some noise, so it's very reliable in noisy environments. I've seen that back when I did a video of the antenna tracker. I was flying with the X8R from FreeSky. One time I had a 11-kilometer long-range trip with that one on 2.4 gigahertz.
Jeez.
And on another flight I did a long-range test with the antenna tracker, and I was flying over an industrial area, and you really see that every about 10 seconds or 20 seconds, I'm not sure right now, the RSSI or the link quality suddenly dropped into a fail-safe, and then it completely recovers again, because the frequency of the transmitter was moving through the 2.4 gigahertz band, and every time it hits the frequency range of the wireless networks of the industrial area, it completely drops because it lost packages, and then it recovers when it moves forward. Darren, you want to say something?
No, I was just going to carry on from what you mentioned there, actually, about receivers, because I've just remembered a friend of mine at the club who flies Spectrum. He had an issue with one of his models. I think he was putting it in a scale cub, and he had lots of issues with the Spectrum receivers, and the antennas apparently are very sensitive, and they're also a bit sensitive to vibration, that sort of thing. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I know he bought a newer type of receiver which fixed all the problems. I think it had internal antennas on this newer Spectrum receiver compared to the external ones. But what I'll do is I'll get in contact with him and find out the information that he was stating, and I'll stick it in the INAV group for the chap who's having the problems. But yeah, there was an issue with receivers, and he had very short range issues and this sort of thing.
Yeah,
and yeah, he sent them off for repair, and there was nothing wrong with it. So it was some sort of inherent issue in the actual design of it.
Yeah, the funny thing is, for me personally, the most reliable receivers I have ever used are the cheap FlySky X6B. I don't know why, but any FlySky receiver I use, turn it on, bind it, never have an issue. Never again. They just work. They are cheap as F, and they just work. So if I use FreeSky receivers, yeah, you have to look, okay, make sure the actual firmware is on it, and maybe update them, and then sometimes you have the wrong antennas on, and yeah, they still work. If they are set up once, they work absolutely fine, but much more to do to get them work correctly.
So the Fly Sky, not Free Sky, but Fly Sky, the one you're using. That's the cheap little like $50 radio that everyone starts off with. And Mark's gonna grab one right now and pull it out. Do you have one in front of you?
Wait a
Right,
second.
he's gonna grab it. Anyways, the thing about these they're 6-channel, and then you can do a little mod to it, make them 10-channel, and then he put a different antenna on there. Look at this. He's got two of them. You got the Turnigy and then you got the Fly Sky, right?
Turnigy Evolution and the Fly Sky i6. That was my first radio, and it still works as good as on day one after 3 years now.
Have you gotten with that? The range on that one?
With the internal antenna on this one, I reached about 2.5, 2.6 kilometers. Since I did the antenna mod with the external antenna, that's the only change I've done on this radio. The maximum was 4.9 kilometers.
Okay,
And
so it's
with this
great.
one, I have just done one range test yet, because I usually use it only for quadcopters, and for my high-speed AR ring, I was at about 1.5 kilometers or so. But didn't have a phase safe yet.
Wow. Okay. So I mean, that's the thing. You don't have to buy really expensive FR Sky radios to get into this. You can start off with the Fly Sky. You can. There's limited because there's only like 10 channels, but I mean, and there's no logical switches on there either. So you can start off with, you can get going, and you can get some decent range off them. And so if you want to get started into INAV fixed wing, you don't have to go down that road if you don't want to go there quite yet. But we, as a group, we don't make any money off of anything we recommend. We just kind of go with, we'll tell you what we worked with and what seems to work. Mark has something. He's mute.
Mark has no audio.
Yeah, sorry.
Mark, talk.
One addition to the point, you can take every radio you want, no matter what you get, and also it's also depending on the receivers you use. Always check your phase safe on the bench. I know why I say that with that sound, because I already had issues where phase safe was not working, and that won't end well.
Was that over the Netherlands a few weeks ago?
No, that was not mine.
Sure.
Fantastic. The next topic I wanted to touch on right now was something that was very interesting. It was Marc has always been in love with the AR wing. I think all of us have been in the group of the AR wing. And about 2 months ago, one of my friends I've known for a year and a half or so said, "Hey, can you build me an AR wing for my son?" And he really wants to get a setup. So I built it, and I photographed it, and I wrote up a little PDF about how I built it, and I basically spilled out everything. And the thought was, when I mean everything, inside the document is the actual CLI of the whole dump of what is in there. And if you use what Darren made, our FR Sky OpenTX transmitter, or you could be a jumper as well, and you follow the formula. If you buy an AR wing, if you use the F405 wing, and just kind of build it like I suggest, you can actually copy and paste this into your flight controller and get yourself a working AR wing with everything set up. So what I did is I contacted our group friend, Mr. Andrew Newton, and said, "Hey, Andrew, would you mind running through this and actually doing a build video of this?" And he's like, yeah, it sounds good. And then he kind of got back to me and said, "Yeah, we're about to come out of quarantine now, so I'm looking forward to flying. I'm going to build this." So he made a video of it. And as he was making the video, he really got into INAV and started asking a lot of deep introspective questions. And so we're probably need to respond to all of it. As far as, one of the questions was, does the air mode do anything? And Darren gets up and leaves right as I'm bringing this up, because this is his favorite topic in the whole world. Nothing gets him more excited than talking about the air mode. But Marc,
I mean, to be honest about this topic, I also talked to him in 1 or 2 comments. At this point, I completely trusted what Pavel said in the past about INAV, and he says always turn air mode on, because you will lose a lot of stabilization as soon as you cut the throttle. I think the feed-forward value will still work fine, so you have full control as normal, but I think the stabilization will go down to the bottom. Maybe that's the point that the integral term of the PIV controller will cut off again. Usually it's that way. I've explained that in the auto launch throw method video, that the integral term only gets active after you punch up the throttle the first time. Before that, it's disabled. I think it gets disabled again if you lower the throttle and air mode is off, but it stays on if you lower the throttle with air mode. Maybe I need to check that. I've never tried it without.
Okay, so you always want to make sure you keep air mode on.
Yeah.
Is what you're saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
From a theoretical point of view, if it works as air mode should, then the whole PID controller should be turned off, and it should just turn into effectively manual mode when the throttle is low. But from Andrew's video, it doesn't look like that's what's happening, regardless of how it's meant to work.
Yeah.
Right.
I think what I could do, maybe I will do this after the call also. I really want to know that, to use one of my long-range planes, arm it, just throttle up without air mode and then throttle down, because I can look at the black box logs what the actual PIV controller is doing. So maybe I can see there's some difference.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, I've also never tested it. I just kind of assumed that it worked as it was supposed to, and because obviously you always want to have air mode on, it's not something you'd ever notice that it works without it on.
Yeah.
So...
I don't think I don't think having air mode off should disable stabilization though. It's always going to be stabilized. This is when you've got a lower throttle value, it gives you more control. So on a fixed wing, it will give more servo output to keep the same amount of control movement at a lower value. It shouldn't stop the
That's not
stabilization.
my understanding of how it works. My understanding of how air mode works is it's a carry on from multi-wii, where the PID controller was only actually turned on at all when the throttle was active, because below that they didn't want things like it jumping around or whatever. But then we had air mode so that you could counteract that, and then that was kind of carried across to fixed wing as well.
So what I understand, I've seen a video, I think it was from Joshua Bardwell a few years ago, about air mode on Betaflight. So what?
Yeah, I think it's the same video I got my information from.
Yeah, I think so. So as far as I understand, usually the PID controller uses the throttle value you have set. Let's say you have 30% throttle enabled right now. So if it wants to turn the copter, I'm talking only about multi-rotors right now, it wants to turn the copter, it can lower one motor on one side down to 0, so it has 30% throttle to play with. And it also uses the same 30% throttle on the other motor to rise up. So if you have 30% throttle, you can only get 60% throttle on one side to turn the copter, actually, without air mode. And what air mode does is, if the PID controller recognizes that it needs more throttle to reach the desired roll or pitch rate, then it will virtually raise up the throttle midpoint during the roll and flip to get more thrust of the motor that is needed to turn the copter. I hope that was clear at this point.
But Andrew's point was that planes inherently glide, so they don't need air mode. That was what his main first point was.
Yeah, that's what I'm confused about, because how air mode works on copters does not apply to wings at this point, because you don't need a throttle value to control the plane.
Maybe it's a case that on the back end, air mode is always enabled on planes, just so that it removes the confusion or removes the potential for it being set off and causing a problem.
Right. I just worry about him taking this thing out and turning that off, and then it turns out that it goes into a stall because he's flying too slow as he's landing. So that's kind of what my main concern. And if it's almost like this is a whole new setup, just go with what you got, and then if you want to play with air mode, once you figure out that it works, okay, go for it, but don't do it all at once, because you won't know what went wrong.
Yeah.
No, that's a good idea about doing things in progression, but it's not really about the speed of the model. It's in relation to the speed of the level of the throttle. So you could be doing 150 miles an hour. If you lower the throttle with air mode permanently enabled, it will try and add more control in. That's the way I understand it anyway. It's not in relation to the actual speed it's going. It's in just purely in relation to throttle. But I've seen in INAV there's checks if you've got air mode active, but you're in manual return to home, and I believe if it doesn't think you're flying, it will actually lower the eye right the way down so that you don't get any oscillations on the ground, that sort of thing. So I've seen that in the code.
Okay.
Fantastic. Oh, before we forget, air mode and acro mode. This is Darren's favorite subject. We get to this all the time. Darren, can you break this down for us once and for all? Air mode acro mode?
No. No, not at all. As we've just been talking about, air mode effectively bolts on top of whatever flight mode you're in. So you could be in angle mode and air mode is still on top of that. Acro is just a stabilized flight mode. So you take manual, you add stabilization to it, you've got acro, or you can call it rate. Those two are fine. Air mode is not acro or rate. It's something completely different. But hopefully that will be sorted out soon in the OSD. So we'll see.
Hey James, have you worked with these modes yet? The acro mode and horizon mode and the acro, horizon, angle mode. Have you worked with all three of those?
Yeah, so I've had a little bit of chance. I got my wing flying about 2 or 3 weeks ago now, so I've had a little bit of opportunity to play with it there. But I've had more problems with some lingering structural issues than more so trying to figure out the angle and horizon and all those different modes. I haven't had a whole lot of time to play with it. My wing here has had some slight problems with some crashes that it's had to endure, where I've basically had to redesign the whole side here where it all links in, and then
you just glue it. Unless I mean Marc
there's only so much glue can do, though. I've got so there's only so much glue can do. It's got some glue left on it there from where I tried to glue it first, and that didn't really work out the best for it. So
all right, it's basically what happens is when those three modes, those are the three different flight modes most people are familiar with. Acro mode is a mode which means basically nothing else is turned on. So all the modes are turned off is acro mode. Isn't that right, Darren?
Yeah. So in the configurator on the modes page, if you've got nothing on at all, then you're in acro mode.
Okay. Then what you've got, the other mode you need to know about is angle mode, which is controlled, what? I know Mark's shaking his head like, no, I hate angle mode.
Yeah.
Let me tell you something, Marc. I got a bone to pick with you about angle mode. This is angle mode. The problem is that you have your pitch set to like 30 and 40. I mean the pitches 30 and 40 and rolls 30 or something like that. One of those two. You need to turn those up, otherwise you're not going to get anything to fly in the angle mode. You'll be begging for it to make a turn. So if you turn those values up, it's somehow livable. And the idea is that the two modes, the acro mode and angle mode, you mix them together and you've got horizon mode. So horizon mode is essentially what it is angle mode until you get to a certain value, which you can program in an INAV. Is it the I-term? No, it's what do you call that one?
Horizon angle transition. It's called, I think.
Angle transition, right? So you can set the number to when, but at default, what happens is we go from dead center of the stick all to about halfway to the edge. It transitions out of angle mode and goes into acro mode. So what you've got is heavy stabilization while it's in that 50% where because it goes left and right. So half that bubble, the inner bubble is angle mode and the outer bubble is acro mode. And to me, I think it's excellent. But if you don't have the angle mode set up right, you're going to hate all those modes. Horizon won't work and angle won't work.
I still have to quote Pavel here. anger mode is an evil mode on planes. It's just evil.
Just don't use angle or horizon. Problem solved.
Yeah, that's the best point. I mean, did
Stick
you
to acro.
did you ever try to use horizon mode and then where you are allowed to do flips and rolls, or not flips, loops and rolls, and just roll the plane overhead and then release the stick?
Yes.
Try that.
Fun.
If you are lucky, it just rolls back. If you have bad luck, it tries to finish a loop and goes straight into the ground. So that's really, really dangerous. And even if you use it on a quadcopter, also on quadcopters, it's really weird, because if you try a flip in horizon mode and you don't release the stick when the copter is already level, but it's like a 90 degrees angle, it can look in any direction after that. Because it suddenly could completely flip around and look into another direction. And if you try your first line of sight flight, that can be pretty dangerous.
Yeah, I think Powell's the one who said he hates pretty much all the modes except for acro mode.
He knows what he's on about.
Yeah, it's just kind of. But I don't know. I've had nothing but good luck with horizon mode. But then again, I like nice and simple and easy. I don't do crazy stuff like you do as far as flips and rolls and stuff like that all the time.
What I wouldn't mind saying is just in case there's any people that are really new to the group and don't really know what the modes are yet. We mentioned sort of the manual, which is you're in full control. Acro has stabilization in it. Angle has self-leveling and only lets you bank to a certain angle. And then the horizon, as Steve mentioned, was a combination of both. But the good thing for using angle for is tuning your flight controller. So I'd put it in there, fly around, getting all set up so that when you hands off, it flies dead level, and then you know that your navigation modes are going to be fine. So that's the main reason for me for angle mode, is to make sure that the flight controller is good in flight, and then just flick to acro or manual and fly properly.
Yes, that's exactly the point why I have angle mode still fitted in my setup. You can determine the correct board pitch alignment. You can determine the cruise throttle. You can check for the stall speed of your plane, because you just keep the plane flying in angle. You cut the throttle slowly until it starts to wriggle and to go down. So you can really check how much throttle do you need for a stable flight, and then you can of course tune your navigation modes too. And the only reason why I still have angle mode on my main mode switch, I usually only fly in either in acro or in 3D cruise. If I do long range, I put in 3D cruise, and then I just let it fly until it reaches the distance I want to have. And the only reason why I use angle mode is just in case, let's say I run out of battery. Then I can switch into angle mode, just cut the throttle completely, and in INAV you have a hidden feature, I would say, in the CLI, where you can say how much the nose should be pitched down if you cut the throttle completely. So you use your angle mode, just cut the throttle, and then the nose automatically will pitch down in the fixed angle and just glide fully automatically. And you can use that for an optimum glide ratio to go as fast as possible without motor power. That's pretty useful. That's the only reason why angle mode is still fitted in my setups.
Interesting. And you never fly with horizon mode then, right?
No, never with horizon mode.
Okay. So that was the one I think you want to get rid of, is horizon mode, and when we're putting the radio together. Okay.
Well, I definitely agree with Mark there. Angle mode does still have its uses, particularly for plane setup. And actually, I've been using it recently for doing high-speed passes, where I just want to be straight and level. I don't even want to fly the plane at all, really. What I want to be doing is looking at the OSD so I can look at the prop RPM, the current, the voltage, and all that kind of thing to try and optimize the setup. And it is pretty good for that, it has to be said.
Yeah, Darren.
So while we're on high-speed passes, maybe it's a good time to mention your little plane, Luke.
I've actually got it behind me, so I think I'm pretty sure I did post a few things about it in the group. So you can see it is really very small. It's about 1.5 head widths or whatever. So
oh yeah, I've seen that.
50mm wingspan. I think I did post about it in the group. But I also posted the record run in the Long Range Hooligans group. I think at that point so this is under 250 grams. It runs on an 8S 450 milliamp hour setup. Has a 350 millimeter wingspan, and with I took it to 267 kilometers per hour, so about, I don't know, 180 miles per hour, and that's two-way average. So the ground speed was 204 miles an hour.
So, and what? Okay, two questions. First of all, what motor do you use, and what propeller?
So the motor is just a really simple Jing 2208 2450 kV, something like that. 2450 kV.
That's sick.
And catch on fire.
Well, yeah, I'm running 1.2 kilowatts through it. Which is quite extreme. But I've run it full throttle for about 30 seconds in one go, and it handled it fine, because obviously at that kind of speed you have so much forced air cooling as well. So it hurts you, but it kind of helps you as well. And then the propeller is an APC 5.25 by 6.25 cut down to 3 inches. So it's actually no, I think it might have been 2.8 inches. I can get some calipers out and measure it. But yeah, I played around with props, loads and loads. I went for about 25 different props, just cutting them down to various sizes, and then testing, seeing what the RPM was and all that kind of thing.
Darren, you have to run this
over and over.
You have to run this through the calculator and tell us the numbers.
I mean, it's not so much a calculator. It's mostly a particular combo or a particular motor and battery combination will have best RPM for efficiency. Not efficiency in a typical sense, but efficiency in the sense of you can draw the most power from it without losing loads of power to battery sag or loads of power to just dumping heat into the motor. And that turned out to be about 28,000 RPM with this motor. So then it's just a case of taking various different props and cutting down various amounts to see how much pitch speed and thrust I can get while keeping that motor RPM the same at full power and full flight speed.
And that plane is made out of foam?
So the wing is foam. It's just 2mm Depron folded around. They're 3D printed wing ribs. I'll have to link it or have it as a link in the notes or whatever, I don't know, to my website where I have a write-up on it. Wow. And then the fuselage is balsa wood. The first version was foam fuselage as well, but I went to balsa wood just for a little bit more stiffness while keeping the size down. The tail plane is balsa wood, and then the motor mount is 3D printed as well. Same as the wing ribs.
What's the all-up weight on this?
Without the batteries, I guess it must be about 90 grams, something like that. 85 grams. God. Yeah, no, sorry, more than that. 140. Yeah, 250 grams minus about 55 grams per battery. So, and it's got 2 batteries. So, yeah, 240, something like that.
So you can fly as high as you like. It's completely legal. It's sub 250.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you wouldn't get too far with this going high. I mean, you could go 200 miles an hour straight up for probably 20 seconds, something like that, before you burnt the battery up.
You'll be in the stratosphere by that point, right?
Maybe.
Yeah, Herc and Cody is asking in the chat, you're trying to reach orbit with that thing?
Certainly, if I had any plane that could reach orbit, this might just be it.
Okay. So that's massively cool. That is the coolest plane.
Yeah, and this is full INAV. So yeah, again, you have to go to my website to look at it properly. But it's got a Maytech F411 wing here in the wing. So none of the electronics are in the fuselage. The fuselage, I don't know how much you can see, but it's completely hollow. That's just for the batteries. So they go from about there to all the way up to the motor.
Oh my god.
So I've got the receiver or video transmitter, camera, flight controller, receiver, all just in the wing. Yeah.
And then the funnest thing about that is that you should just go to like one of those fields, flying fields, like all the old gas guys are,
Yeah.
and pull that thing out and let them laugh at you for a little while. And then fly it by them. That would be, you gotta do a video of that. That would be so awesome.
I'm gonna have to see that fly, Luke.
Yeah, I will bring it as soon as the whole virus situation's over.
Yeah.
I'll bring it to your field and give you a
Oh,
little look
we'll
at it.
just go down the common. We'll do it anywhere.
Oh, yeah, if you want to come to the common, we can do it tomorrow. That's fine with me.
So I'm still
I'll video it.
I'm still working on optimizing my high-speed AR ring, but unfortunately on a pusher plane it's much harder to get all the power out of the motor without burning it up because it's in the shadow of the fuselage.
Don't have the cooling, yeah.
Yeah, I have the ARB motor on there right now, the Racer Star ARB.
Which one's that? The 2207?
No, the 2514.
Oh wow, one of the massive ones. Is that like the Jing 2814? That kind of class?
No, it's a little bit smaller. It's a a quadcopter motor. It's the Racer.
Oh, so
it's designed by T-Motor. It looks like the T-Motor, the F1507, I think, just in big. And and it has 1,500 kV roundabout, and at the moment, as far as I know, it's the fastest AR ring on 4S. On 4S, I reach about 185 kilometers per hour with that, and I can go
about 110 miles an hour, something like that.
Yeah, 110, 120 roundabout, and at least with that setup, if I fly level, I can go full throttle all the time. So I'm still under 45 amps. So that's the motor continuous limit, and just in a climb, I really need to cut down the throttle because in a steep climb the current draw raises to 55, 60 amps roundabout.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, so I've got a project in the works. Let me just pull it up. Can I do a screen share? I think I can in this, can't I?
Yeah, of course.
So I've never really used Skype very much. How do I? Can't find it. Oh, it's that button there. Okay.
Yeah, at the bottom right, there's a screen share button below, beside the little heart.
Wow, there we go.
See?
Yeah, I see it.
Yep.
Oh, wait a second. Yeah. Wait a second. I have to switch to screen share for the stream too. That's here. Okay, now you can go.
You can see it. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this is something I've been working on recently. And this is going to be 800mm wingspan, so not under 250 grams, but with what will eventually be a Jing 1552 or something like that. I can't remember the exact one. This was all a few weeks ago that I was working it all out. With 30 lithium-ion 18650 cells in a 10S configuration. So hopefully I'm going to be able to go about 200 miles an hour for about 15 minutes straight. That's the plan. We'll see how well that goes, but it should be quite a bit of fun if it works. And the potential idea with that was to be the 10-mile challenge. So 10 miles out, 10 miles back. Yeah, maybe.
Again, you fly to Dover, do a flyover of France, and come back. I think Luke froze.
I think now his PC crashed. He warned us in the beginning.
There we go. So I was gonna. This is a good time for me to ask James, what's going on with you crashing that AR wing?
Let's see. I think for the first part, it was just me being dumb and not having as much support in there. I don't think I had the spar in to start with, and then I was launching it in one of the stabilization modes for a while because trying to figure it out by myself. And so what we kind of decided was happening was it was launching up and get about 5-6 feet in the air, it'd go up, and then the stabilization modes would take over, and it would nose itself over, and it would drive itself into the ground as fast as it possibly could.
Listen, Mark, what does that sound like?
Okay, so was it during launch? Sorry, I was a little bit distracted by the chat right now.
So what he was talking about is he's taken off in stabilization mode, and the plane goes up, and it starts to go up, and then all of a sudden, he says stabilization takes over and crashes. Sounds like, do you have pitch, like 3 degrees of pitch in the configurator?
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah, but that shouldn't be the reason. I think maybe the board rotation was wrong. So that's a very common issue, that people just check the pitch and roll on their transmitter, but not in angle mode to see if the ailerons move in the correct direction. So that could be the reason then. So if you go straight up, then instead of pushing the nose down to get back to the desired attitude, it will still pull up until it goes into air mode and it tries to stabilize. And then when it tries to pull up, it will instead push the nose down and continue, because it thinks it moves in the wrong direction, and this causes a crash then. I just had a friend yesterday with exactly the same issue. So with the transmitter, everything was fine, but on the servo were inverted still, and it directly auto-launched into the ground.
That's a good point. So the S3 and the S4 on the board needs to be, they showed the pictures in the diagram. You got to make sure like that the one that's S3 is we're standing in the back, is on the left side of the plane, and S4 is on the right side of the plane.
Yep. Yeah, I got all that kind of figured out, and all the stabilization stuff works in the air just fine, regardless of what I can do to it there. So I've just been launching it in manual mode. That works just fine. The second crash that really did it in was the one of the servos failed in flight.
Wow.
Oh, okay.
So unfortunately, I don't think the video I had recording on it either must not have started on the cam on the plane itself, or just hit the ground so hard it was corrupted. But it was flying at about 150 feet. Kind of felt the controls getting a little bit mushy, and it was getting a little bit windier. So I was about to circle around and bring it into land, and basically just kind of lost control of it. And it started to nose over behind a line of trees, and it went down, and I could see it kind of going over, and I had no control over any of the ailerons. So I hit the failsafe switch, disarmed the motor, and then it went right into the gun. And I heard this crunch behind the tree line, and
is that with the PMP model, plug and play version of that?
It was a kit.
Okay. So if your all up weight is right and everything else, CG's right, should be good.
Yeah.
So Luke, sorry we got you cut off here, and you got us all primed up with this beautiful plane, and then all of a sudden you're gone.
Yeah, I think it was when I quit screen sharing. I might have clicked the wrong button, or I put Fusion also crashed, so I'm not sure. Whatever. Yeah. Yeah. What questions did you have?
I was going to ask you, when it comes to planes, what are your favorite planes? Because it looks like you got quite a few of them.
Well, yeah. Unfortunately, it's probably not really even FPV, my favorite planes. Really, I like doing 3D aerobatics, and so that's line of sight. I love gliders. I've really been getting into DLG recently, the last few months. So that's where you have a discus launch with a small 1.5 meter glider, and you chuck it up into the air. Yeah, and then I've done quite a bit of long range flying, FPV, a bit of everything really. It would be hard to say what's my favourite one. They're all good for different things.
So when it comes to INAV, what are your favorite ones for like INAV fixed wing planes?
Even just trying to narrow it down to INAV, it becomes quite hard still. I mean, I love the little sub 250 gram speed plane. That's really exhilarating. I have a twin motor Striker, Park Zone Striker. That's really nice for just high speed cruising around. Then I have my long range FPV plane. That's great for just staying up in the air for 3-4 hours at a go.
Wow.
Just hovering around, or going as far as you want, really. Yeah, whatever. I love it all.
Hey, speaking of planes, Marc came up with an interesting observation this week, and so I asked him to hold off on it. Just off the top of your head, what would you think has a bigger fuselage? I'm going to ask Luke, because Russ, the Talon GT or the Talon Mini?
Well,
keep in mind the Talon Mini has a 1.3 meters wingspan, and the Talon GT 1 meter.
I'm terrible for this, since I really don't buy any like planes like that. All of mine I build myself, so I don't know what either of those are, to be honest. I know roughly what you're on about when you're talking about like the Talons. I know of them, but I don't know what to mention whatever,
Okay. So the Talon are these little VTOL planes, and the Talons come in like 4 different sizes. They have the regular Talon, which is a 1.8 meter, and then the Talon Mini, which is 1.3 meter. And
yes,
then
you have the. I know which one the Mini Talon is. I nearly bought one quite a few times, but I'm not sure which one the Talon GT is.
okay, Mark will take you through that.
Yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately, to show it to you because they are just too big, I have disassembled them. So I have the Mini Talon here. It's this one.
Yeah.
It's the one with the 1.3 meter wingspan.
Yeah, that's the one that you see everyone flying.
Yeah, a lot of people have it, and it's a great long-range plane. But the funny thing is, this is the smaller Talon GT from ZOHD. I think they are not even related. They just share the same name. But if you compare them,
the fuselage is nearly the same size.
the fuselage on the outside is actually bigger on the Mini Talon, but you have so small room to work on. It's really ridiculous. So on the Talon GT, you have the backside with the ESC, you have the middle part for the flight controller, and you have a huge battery compartment, and you really have to squeeze your battery inside this opening behind this wooden plate, and half of the battery bay is completely covered here.
Wow, yeah.
But it's pretty funny.
You know that plane though, the Talon Mini Talon, that thing is kind of like, when you look in the group, that is like a rite of passage. When you buy that, it's like, hey, this plane is only $60, but it shows up in pieces and like little wood pieces and all this foam, and it takes you months to assemble it. And I wouldn't say months, but there's a bit of work to it. We lost Luke again.
Yeah, I think I'm back.
Oh, there you are.
I don't know what's going on. I pressed the button and it closed again. I'm not sure.
So don't press buttons.
Yeah. Well, I was trying to get rid of the background blur, but I can't find the button to do that now. So I guess I'm just going to leave it.
If you,
I think it's just stuck with it. Yeah.
Below your camera preview, there's a little drop-down menu with your name. If you click on there, there's a button. There's a menu.
Oh yeah, there we go. Perfect.
That's
Thank
the
you.
option.
Like I say, I'm not used to Skype, so
no problem.
I did want to mention one thing, just kind of something that Mark, I think we talked about this a couple weeks ago briefly. When it comes to antennas and working with it, I don't know what your experiences have been with antennas at all on your different ones you've used.
Is this me or?
Yeah, well, yeah, you should maybe ask you, have you had any experience with any of these different antennas, like the different omnidirectional antennas? Which ones tend to work better than others?
You're talking about FPV antennas, right?
Video antennas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. In terms of omnidirectional antennas, I've only really had experience with one good set, and that's the basic Aeon Wave antennas from Banggood, the really cheap ones, the red and blue ones or whatever.
Right.
In terms of directional antennas, I've built quite a few. So I've built quite a lot of helical FPV antennas, all the way from 3 turns up to 25 turns. Yeah, so that's the 25 turn one is what I used for my long range stuff. And the triple feed patches, they're quite good. I quite recently got about 6 months ago, I got the big array one. So the one with
7.
Yeah, 7. I think that's it. I was about to say 6. Yeah, that one. So, and that's quite nice as well. Not quite as much gain.
Mark, you gotta say something so we can see you.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can switch my own camera for the stream.
Okay.
That's fine.
Yeah, so not quite as much gain as a 25 turn helical, but still quite a bit, and it has a bit more of a field of view, or you know what I mean, angle.
Yeah, see, the problem I ran into is I had a guy come out, he looked at one of my planes, he brought his own goggles, he brought some Fat Sharks, and I was like, okay, I'm losing video signal range, so I'm turning around, and he's like, what's wrong? I can still see you fine. And I was like, I thought it was my goggles, and for the longest time, I'm trying to figure out what the problem was. So we were talking about the different antennas, and I decided to bite the bullet and buy for the goggles, something inexpensive, but expensive when it comes to these antennas. This is the Lollipop 3 from Fox here. So all of a sudden now the range is like doubled on this set of goggles.
Yeah.
Unbelievably good. I can't believe how good these things worked out. So I don't know if Marc has played with them and has a set. Have you noticed a difference between them, what you've been working with?
To be honest, the Lollipop antennas I only use on my quadcopters and on my high-speed AR ring that I only use in short range. But they are great, especially because they are very robust. I have the stubby ones on I think. Yeah, on my old freestyle and on my high-speed AR ring, I have the stubby one. I want to test them too on a long-range plane, but then only on the Talon GT because the antenna is in the ring tip. It won't work on the AR ring, very close to the battery. They are pretty fine, but to be honest, I can't see really big differences between all the antennas I used so far. I have the, I think it's also Aomray Pagoda antennas, the red ones. Right. I have a bunch of them. I have an TBS Triumph antenna. I have a few Lollipop 3. I have now on my where did I put it? On my Dart 250G, I have now an Emax, these very, very small micro antenna. I can't see a big difference between all of them, to be honest. So
Darren, what do you think?
For me, it's completely about the roughness of the antennas.
I think you're not going to see the difference until you really push it to the limits, unless you've got a really bad antenna to begin with. I mean, for the longer range, it's going to be sort of more of a patch and the directional antennas that are going to help you. So stuff like the Lollipop is only really a short range antenna anyway. It's an Omni. So if you wanted to go a bit further, what you probably want to upgrade is the patch antenna, because you can get some really small patches that are sort of 9 to 13 dBi for 5.8, and that's where you're going to see the biggest gains.
I think the same. Mostly these antennas, these Omni antennas, they are all circular polarized. So I think if you have a high quality antenna, you will see, especially in bando areas or near buildings and near a lot of interference areas, a big difference. But I think not really in range.
Yeah, I mean, so on my goggles, I run one of those, which is the Video Aerial Systems Ion, and that's I did notice a bit of a difference with that. There's a bit more gain on that, and it's a really good axial ratio, so that's pretty good. But the thing that makes the bigger difference is the patch that you use. I mean, this is a tiny little thing, but it's 9.5 dB of gain. It's quite good, and you'll find a cheaper like the stuff you get with the goggles will be half the gain of that.
So something like this is what you're talking about.
Yeah, that the Spironet's a pretty decent antenna, for patch, but this one is circular polarized. So if you've got a CP antenna on the plane, you ideally want a CP patch. So some of those Spironets I think are linear, so you want to match up with what you've got, because I think you get about a 3 dB loss from going from linear to circular polarized. So
that's about right.
Yeah, it's about matching as well as the better quality and just picking the right antenna for the job.
On my goggles, I usually use this one, the Rear ACC Pagoda triple feed patch, and I think it has about 9.4 dBi gain.
Yeah, it's about the same gain as mine, but mine's probably tiny compared to that. But the thing I like about those is you can go from left to right circular polarized. They're really good antennas.
I can do that here too.
Yeah, that's what I mean. My one's just right hand. So
okay.
With your one, you can pick and choose.
Yeah. So with this one, the furthest range I have achieved was about 10 kilometers at 500 milliwatts, and with the big one, or with my Talon GT with 1,000 milliwatts, I reached about 15 or 16 kilometers with this one roundabout. But with the big triple feed, with the 150 millimeters, I have not found the limit yet. So my furthest was 20 kilometers of range, but then I turned around because of the battery, not because of the video reception.
I'm still tempted to try some of those on my goggles.
Maybe in the show notes we can put the list of what you liked as far as the antennas you use, so that we can people can go back and look through it. And I know we just kind of mentioned them all really quickly, so people will have an opportunity to see what we got. Fantastic. Awesome. Well, before we wrap this up, any last words? I think the other thing we were supposed to mention was that Andrew Newton said it was showing that when he turned on ARM, the throws did not change at all between when he was working. What mode was that? Was that acro mode? He was showing the throws work the same in acro mode. Yeah. So that was it. We turned on acro mode. The throws were exactly the same, disarmed as it was armed. And so I've noticed in some of my planes.
No, you're talking about the other video, aren't you, where it's between manual and then switching to acro.
Right.
And there wasn't as much difference as he thought there was going to be.
Right.
Isn't that just changed by manual rates, yaw, pitch, and roll, or whatever those CLI terms are?
No, the manual rate is basically like traditional rate on your transmitter. So it's usually set to 100, so you get 100% of the movement. But if you lower it to say 50, you can move the stick 100%, but it will only do 50% on the surface.
Now, I understood that differently. I understood the manual rate as being a percentage of the rate that you'll get in acro mode, because when I'm sure at some point I read the description for it as being so that you could lower your rate in manual mode, so when you don't have stabilization, it's easier to fly.
No, actually,
I may well be wrong though.
No, actually, it does just limit the servo way. So the servo, you lower the servo limit, nothing more at this point.
Yeah, it's just traditional dual rates, effectively.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
So, is there a difference? Between turning on, or maybe I should ask the question: do some planes show more of a difference when you arm versus when you have an unarmed? Because his didn't show a difference at all.
Yeah, again, it's not really something I've tried. Same kind of problem as with the air mode thing. It's never something you'd really notice because I don't care how much travel it's got when it's disarmed.
Yeah, it's when you're. I mean, the advice we usually give people is you test your throws in manual. Make sure you've got enough throw in manual, and then switch over to acro, and then just adjust your feed forward so you get 90% of the throws in manual, and then you'll be fine. That's the advice we usually give people. Yeah, as you say, we don't really investigate any further than that.
Yeah, he likes to dig deep into this, and I appreciate that. But the thing is, that plane's going to fly great. The part of the manual is there's right before the CLI dump was I asked Marc to give me some of his PIDs between the two wings he has, AR wings. One is a cruiser and one is a speed. So the speed one has the Air B on it, and the cruiser is one of the Sunny Sky motors, I believe. And he gave out the PIDs, and so from that, I've actually put them on my planes and find they work fantastic. It works great. So that might be the situation you're having there, James, is that you might want to go back to our manual, look up the PIDs. What Marc suggests, I would start off with the cruiser, not the speed one. And yeah, you should be better off with that. So fantastic. Well, Luke, you have a website?
Yeah, I have a website. It's just my name, lukeatabato.com.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then people can ask you for help in the group as far as all your electrical, if they want to get their planes flying faster.
Yeah, definitely.
I think people would want to know how they can build that sub 250 that can do 8.
Yeah, I mean, I had a lot of questions about that on the Long Range Hooligans group, and as much as, you know, if you want to do it, go ahead, I guess, but it's really not. It's something you have to work up to. I definitely wouldn't recommend just building it straight away.
We should
yeah.
probably warn it's potentially flammable. What you're suggesting right there?
Oh, very much. If you don't practice good throttle control, it will just catch fire in the air. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. Yeah.
So it's very small, very fast, and flammable. So not the kind of thing you want to fly when in.
Yeah, and I mean just other things like to get it under the 250 grams, I had to cut the balance connectors off the batteries and that kind of thing. Which obviously those kind of things I generally wouldn't recommend. They can be done safely, but aren't good to advise other people to do. So, yeah.
Oh, jeez.
By the way, I would like to show you a little funny thing I got today from a friend. He maidened his AR wing yesterday. It's his first FPV plane overall, although he has also already some experience with quadcopters during the last years. And the funny thing is, he had his heart rate monitor on his wrist. And he sent me a screenshot of his heart rate. I will open this, switch to the screen share. So you see his bike trip before he launched the plane. And his heartbeat goes up to 164.
I posted a link to my website in the YouTube chat. Can you guys see it, or is it not showing up for everyone else?
And the YouTube chat.
Because Herc and Cody has just asked me again what I called the long endurance plane, but it's not a shop bought plane; it's one I made, so I didn't actually say what it was. But I tried to post a link just above where you asked before to my my website where I had a bit of an article about it or a build log for it. So
I don't see the link. I think it might.
Okay, so I'm guessing it's been banned because it's a link.
Yeah, maybe. Just post it in Skype. I will send it in the chat.
Yeah.
We'll post it on the screen. Yeah, that'd be fantastic.
Yeah, so this is the one just for my web. Oh, that's the one just for my website, and then let me just get the one up for that. Yeah, and that's the one for the specific page for the long endurance plane.
Ah, okay.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your help in the group. I really appreciate it. And are you done for the school year? Or are you still going on? You have summer school like James here?
We don't have summer school or anything like that. We haven't been at university since early March or whatever. But I have exams now, so they're still keeping the exams on despite not having had any teaching.
It's incredibly unfortunate. They really should just cancel all finals and exams. It's
a bit of a joke, really. We haven't had any teaching in 2 months, but yeah, they're carrying on with the exams. I'm not going to get into that. That's a completely different story. But yeah, I have an exam tomorrow morning for analog analysis and design, and then 2 others later on. So. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Good luck with that, man. That's. Do you have to actually show up to the university to take the exams, or you can do those online?
It's an online exam, so it's an hour-and-a-half exam. Then they've given us another hour-and-a-half to upload the exam. Yeah, which is again a bit whatever, but it's all quite funny and interesting.
So you've been taking your courses at home, both of you guys, then, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you've been working. Are you still working from home or in this internship?
Well, yeah, I was meant to be starting work in June or late June, early July. But because of the whole virus thing, I said, well, I'm not really doing anything for uni, so I can start a month, 2 months, 3 months early. So for the last month, I've been working for them. Which has had a small impact on how much I've really been wanting to do university work and stuff, but it's not terrible.
That's like the worst thing. Is this a paid internship or is this just a?
Oh yeah, it's paid. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. See, that's the hardest thing is once you start earning money in the real world, you don't want to go back.
Yeah, I certainly already I'm enjoying my job quite a lot, so I can't really see university being too fun after this.
You go back and do it again. That's it, man. That's fantastic. And then, as far as James, does your club have a website?
I know we have a Facebook page.
Okay, that would be great too.
Can send a link to. Rise has a lot of what we do. So the first link I'm sending is a link to Rise, which is the university one. They do a lot of funding for the club. It's kind of a I scratch your back, you scratch mine sort of relationship we have. Let's see if I can find that one.
So we're all going to start up next year. There's going to be a bunch of us that are in our 50s and 60s who are going to show up to university, start the program. And we're all going to start our own fraternity house. We'll be living in there. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be a fun time. We'll have INAV and Greek letters on the
Yeah, I know a couple of the guys are getting together. They have an apartment for next year, and instead of having a dining room, they're going to have a center RC building room.
Damn, that sounds like a great time.
I can't believe you get dining rooms over there in the US. We don't even get a living room, barely.
Yeah, our living room in a lot of the apartments on the campus, this design is they've got like rooms on the outside, and then they've got the center little area. And on one end of it's a kitchen and a dining room that has tile, and the other end's a living room.
Yeah, it's kind of like when my daughter went to college, the first year, she ended up living in a dorm with 3 girls, about the size of a person's bedroom. So the girl that was in the bunk above her, she had 14 inches from where her bed was to where the ceiling started. So if you like sneeze in the middle of the night, they had the popcorn acoustic ceiling. You would probably get like dimples inside your head if you sneezed. It's just horrible. So yeah,
that one's one. I don't think we have a public facing page. I think it's just our a private group.
Okay. Yeah, just we have other people in your group as part of the INAV fixed wing group as well.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Yeah. So.
Yep. I believe so.
We like to keep tabs of you guys and find out what you're up to and all that, and keep the relationship going with the university. Obviously, there's not a lot of universities in the United States that offer the unmanned aviation program, so this is kind of new and exciting for us.
Yeah, I think there's a couple. I know you mentioned Northeastern earlier. I know they particularly participate in the CDRC, CDRA races that we have. I know they were one of our top competitors. I think they had the fastest pilot goes there for the drone racing.
Did you guys beat them?
I think Northeastern might have pulled ahead. They had a pilot who was putting down sub 30-second laps, and the course was designed to be about a 35 to 40 second. This guy was putting down like 23-second laps.
It was
absolute insanity.
They had a Northeastern night. I shouldn't say this, but my daughter was deciding to go to college, and the guy comes out, and he was such a prick that after it was over, I was like, "There's no way in hell you're going to that college." But no, it's Northeastern's a great college, but it's not really. It's more of a computer science. I think their program more so than aviation. So.
Yeah. Let's see.
Just because I remembered, it's worth noting that the webpage that was posted for the long-range FPV plane is already a year old now. So. There's been quite a lot done to it. I really do need to update my website at some point, but I keep on getting tangled up in new things rather than keeping updated with old things. So
one of the things we're talking about doing is we're talking about having our own group website. So we'll be announcing that pretty soon here, and from that we'll be able to link into groups like yours.
It sounds like you're announcing already.
We don't have a domain purchase yet. So the idea is that we're going to, because it's hard to get the information out there. There's so much information that we want to share with people that Facebook is not conducive for doing that. So we're looking at actually having a website where we just like, hey, if you want to know anything, just go to this website. Plus, we can also keep tabs on people like James and like you, Luke, and all the cool things you're doing, and keep it fresh and exciting as well. because the way we have it, they have units, which doesn't make a lot of sense. It's more designed for structural learning, like you're having a course, like a college course of some kind, but not really for a support group.
It's worth mentioning when you're talking about Facebook. Obviously, it's not great for hosting information, but I think something that you can do a lot of people don't know about is you can search a group, just like you do a Google search.
Right.
And you can get loads of great information that way. You can find loads of stuff on the group doing that.
I have noticed that we've done that, but our group is now like 18 months old, and it's some of the stuff that was there originally in like the first month or so, I can't find anymore.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I have to admit, I've never actually searched the fixed wing group.
So it's good for like I think it goes back a year, 6 months, 9 months or something like that. But usually it puts more emphasis on the newer content. But it is great. Like, for example, there's one guy he just mentioned a plane. Hey, I want to put INAV on this plane. Has everyone done it before? And it was like a Hobby King, one of the obscure ones. And I did a search and I found the plane right away. And I was able to talk to the guy, and we asked him questions. Is it good? Oh, man, this is fantastic. You got to do it. So it's cool for that kind of stuff. And we also have a group map that we can actually find people who live close by to you so you can fly with them, except for James, because the only people that live close by to him are people in his club. We've got a few people in Wisconsin, though, in the group. I'm kind of excited. We have a new member this week who is from a place called Darwin. It's in the Northern Territory of Australia, and it is absolute no man's land up there. So I knew that there was one RC club up there, and I was like, man, if we can get one guy from Darwin, and we got the guy who just showed up, and we also got someone from Tijuana, and we've got people from like really interesting parts all over the world. So our group is growing. Really want to thank also Andrew Newton for mentioning our group and making this video. I'm scared as hell about what he's going to do with this AR wing. I'm sure it's going to work fine, but he kind of mentions like he has to get the plane taken off and flying up about 400 feet as quickly as possible. And so, it's kind of like, I hope it works.
He has done quite a bit with INAV before, though, hasn't he?
Yeah, he has.
Yeah.
He makes planes out of cardboard boxes. It'll be fine.
Yeah, I've seen his boxlers and stuff.
No, this is really we had an opportunity to talk to him a couple months back, and the guy, he's never like done a video chat before with people and doing like what we're doing here, so he's kind of nervous about it because he's usually talking in the camera and not having it talk back. But the guy that you see on the videos is exactly that guy. I mean, he's just a wonderful person, and you ask him a question, he'll give you an honest answer. So definitely worth following him. And I'm really excited that he took our project on. Because of that, I think we've had like 100 new people find our group in this past week. So I also want to welcome all those people to the group as well. So, all right, everybody. Well, thank you so much. I think that's going to be it for us for the week. Or if we do this like every 2 or 3 weeks or something like that. Luke, it was great having you. Thank you so much for the information. We'd love to follow you. James. James, definitely. Thank you. Good luck when you come back to college next week and leaving Wisconsin to a small town in South Dakota.
Well, yeah, dear. Up in the
Northern Dakota, okay.
Up there in the North Dakota. Nice and cold. I think they got like 3 inches of snow this weekend or something, so that'll be fun.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of people in the group there because there's not a lot of people who live up there in North Dakota. It's a very small.
It's pretty accurate. Plus, flying weather's not great.
But the one thing I'll say about them is they didn't close down their state for the quarantine.
No, they did actually. They
did?
Some stuff closed down. They had a few problems with some industrial plants that they kept open. But the real problem I was looking at is they had an order from the beginning of March through this Friday actually that if you traveled out of state or came into the state, you had to quarantine for 14 days after arriving, or your entire time there, whichever was shorter. So I was really trying to figure out what I was going to do for 14 days there, but they just got rid of that yesterday now. Or no, 2 days ago now. So now I'm free to go about the state.
Otherwise, you could have ordered a whole bunch of planes. You could have done flight tests, and you could have gone and got some Depron, and you could have had like 80 planes by the time those 2 weeks were up.
Yeah, no kidding.
That's awesome. Marc, thank you so much. Everything good with you, man?
Yeah, everything fine here. So looking forward to get some more flight days now that the weather is getting better. Last 2 days it was more than 20 degrees here, and I was able to go outside in the t-shirt. So
awesome.
hopefully that continues during the next weeks.
Fantastic. Darren, are you flying?
Hopefully, we're having some news today, apparently. So hopefully things will be slackened off a little bit, and I'll be able to get out flying. But yeah,
I think we actually just missed the news, didn't we? I think it must have finished 10 minutes ago. Wasn't it 7 p.m.? Or am I getting that completely wrong?
I've no idea. But,
Maybe it could have been
I'll
any
listen
time.
at some point.
Yeah.
I've got plenty to get on with.
Send me a message, give me a summary.
Hopefully they'll let you guys out of the clink and you can get back to flying. So that's yeah. So you're banned from all. I don't know. I had a cop come up to me about a week ago. I was not wearing a mask. My dog was off the leash, and I'm flying a plane. And he's like, "That's a cute dog. What's its name?" So I'm like, oh, "Thank God."
Yeah, no, it's crazy. I mean, we can go to a supermarket where there's hundreds of people, but we can't go out in the middle of nowhere and fly a plane. So there's some things are a bit silly, but you just got to get on.
Yeah.
Well,
until tomorrow when Luke and I are going to go fly a little plane.
That's gonna be awesome.
Well, we are going to stay 2 meters apart. So
yes, we'll be responsible and social distance.
In fact, we might even push it 3.
That's gonna be awesome. I'm looking forward. So it's starting off for you guys. Then that's fantastic, and the weather's improving.
Oh no, here the weather's getting terrible for the next week or so.
It's been lovely for about a month.
It's been absolutely great, but yeah.
It turns to crap right as it opens up again. Yeah. Oh, that's too bad. All right, guys. Well, thanks. Good talking with you, and we'll catch you guys next time.
Yeah. Cheers, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you. See ya.
Thanks.
Bye guys. Okay, stream is stopped now.
Cool.